All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I believe we are live. Everybody give me a hello, hi, happy Saturday afternoon. Guys, we are live right now on Rumble, Matt Morris TV, and YouTube, of course, Matt Morris TV. Everybody drop a follow and subscribe. We have, frankly, some big news today to talk about. Welcome back to today's special Saturday broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all saw, I'm sure, yesterday afternoon, President Trump had an absolutely historic meeting with the president of Russia. His name is Vladimir Putin, up in Alaska. And really, as of just a couple hours ago, this is really hot off the press today. It's going to be an exciting broadcast. We actually now know most of the details of this peace negotiation, of this deal. All of the details are kind of coming to light. They're trickling on out. And so today we're going to go over what those deals are. We're going to try to break down whether or not this meeting was productive, whether it was productive or not, how consequential was it really, and also where do we currently stand, but also how are things moving forward. As a little bit of a spoiler, President Trump is pretty much working his deal-making magic. I've seen over the last couple, maybe 12, 13, 14 hours, I've seen some of the, members of the left-wing media, the usual suspects, saying, oh, this was a total failure for President Trump, whatever. I'm not so sure about that. Now we have some new information. So today we're going to break that down. First off, to kick things off with you guys, like I said, please go ahead and like and subscribe today's show. Let's jump right into this, guys. Here we go. After the interview, really negotiation between President Trump and Putin, President Trump himself took to Truth Social late last night. So some people might have missed this. We're going to do a little bit of a recap here before we get to where we are today. President Trump posted, "A great and very successful day in Alaska. The meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia went very well, as did a late night phone call with the president of Ukraine. His name is Zelenskyy." So Trump talked to Zelenskyy late last night, okay, and various European leaders as well, including the highly respected Secretary General of NATO. It was determined by all that the best way to end this horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up. So this is what President Trump is angling for. President Trump doesn't want a temporary ceasefire. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, whatever. Ceasefire, we want to bring this war to an end. We want 100% concrete, firm resolution to permanently put an end to the bloodshed, to the mayhem, to the carnage. Let's keep reading here. President Trump says, if everything works out, we will then schedule a meeting with President Putin again. Potentially millions of people. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped a line. I skipped a very important line here, a little sentence. President Trump said, President Zelenskyy will be coming to Washington, D.C., the Oval Office, on Monday afternoon. What is that? Today's Saturday. Was that 2.5 days from now? And folks, we're going to be live on Monday all day following that. That's a big deal. So Zelenskyy is coming back to D.C., back to the United States. He's going to come back to the Oval Office. We all saw how that went last time. Remember that? There's that iconic photograph where Trump and Vance, they're like, hey, shut up. Pretty much so. He's coming back. Zelenskyy is coming back to the Oval Office. I think circumstances are a little bit different this time. And hopefully they're going to be able to come to not a temporary ceasefire, but a complete and total shutdown. It seems shutdown of the war, of the conflict, of the carnage. Seems like that is where things are going. Potentially millions of lives will be saved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Let's all hope that Zelenskyy wears a suit this time. Maybe he has learned his lesson. So this is what President Trump posted late last night. Okay, we're getting caught up. Now, after posting this on Truth Social, President Trump then sat down for a one-on-one interview with Sean Hannity. I don't know how he has the energy. President Trump is like 80 years old. I'm 31. I don't know how he finds the energy to do all of this. He's saving the world and giving interviews, and I couldn't do it. But anyway, so late last night, it was like at 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. last night, he sat down for a 35-minute long interview with Sean Hannity. We're not going to watch the entire thing, but I've pulled out a couple clips I want to share with you guys as it relates to this ongoing peace negotiation. So take a look at this, folks.
If you had to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, So I think the meeting was a 10 in the sense that we got along great, and it's good when, you know, two big powers get along, especially when they're nuclear powers. You know, we're number one, they're number two in the world, and it's a big deal. That's a big deal. You never want to even mention that word, the word nuclear, but
no, you don't.
We have.
President Trump calls it the N-word. He says you do not want to say the N-word. What is the N-word? Nuclear. You don't want to say that.
A tremendous nuclear. You know, I rebuilt it when I was president, first term, and I hated to rebuild it. It was the one thing I hated to rebuild, but we had to. And we have the greatest nuclear force. We have the greatest military in the world, actually. And they have a big nuclear presence also.
If you had.
Well, you know what? President Trump is totally right. He understands just how serious, just how on the edge. We're on a razor's edge here with this situation in Ukraine. This is the case. Listen, very easily, still tomorrow, it could happen right this very second. What's going on in Ukraine could escalate. It could blow up. Something crazy happens. And then boom, we've got World War III. You know, you look back on the way in which World War I manifested and unfolded, the way in which World War II manifested and unfolded. And, you know, it doesn't, in the moment, it doesn't really seem like a whole lot. But then you wake up and you're like, whoa, we have a world war on our hands. 1939, Hitler invades Poland. Did anybody think that that was going to become a world war? At the time, I don't think anybody was thinking that that was going to become World War II, but it did. And so the situation in Ukraine, listen, the stakes are high. We're on a razor's edge, right? And so President Trump realizes, listen, hey, Russia is a serious country. They're a rich country. They've got a serious leadership team. They have nuclear weapons. They've got what, the second or maybe the single largest nuclear arsenal in the world. We need to de-escalate out of this situation. We cannot let this situation devolve into a nuclear holocaust, God forbid. And so President Trump takes this situation seriously. And then you flip it. It makes you wonder, you know, the American leadership, the deep state, some of the leaders over in NATO, have they been wanting nuclear war? They've been egging this entire situation on for 3.5 years before President Trump got back in the White House. Did these idiots, were they angling for World War III? Did they want a nuclear exchange? Because the way that this has been handled prior to President Trump getting back in the White House has been handled so incredibly, insanely, recklessly. It makes you wonder if this is what they wanted, if they wanted an all-out nuclear world war. God forbid, I don't know. Now, President Trump, listen, let's get back to Trump. President Trump said this was, as far as he is concerned, this negotiation, this talk that he had with Putin yesterday afternoon, he said, as far as he's concerned, this was a 10 out of 10. He's happy with the way this went. And I think as we go through some of the information today that I want to share with you guys are going to come to understand why he says this is a 10 out of 10. Right now, things really are moving along. But first, there's another clip from last night coming out of Fox News. Once again, I want to play with you guys as it relates to all of this. Take a look.
I just was texting back and forth with Sean Hannity, who just sat down with the president. And he said the president noted that he came out and said there wouldn't have been a war if he was president. And that's what part of Vladimir Putin said at the end of his written remarks.
Did you guys catch that yesterday afternoon during this this post-negotiation little debrief they gave to the public here? Putin himself said if Trump was in the office, in the Oval Office, in the White House, instead of Joe Biden, this entire situation would not have happened. And by the way, this is actually, I looked into this, this is actually the second time that Putin has publicly said this. Putin said as such during a Russian interview about 12 months ago. So this is something Putin has been consistent on. If Trump had been in the White House, this situation would not have happened. Trump has been saying this for years now, and he's right. And now we know he's right. Totally vindicated.
And he also said on a scale of 1 to 10, I give today a 10. So that's the president grading what he thought of the meeting.
News conference, this, by all of our standards, isn't a news conference.
That's excellent news, and exactly what we needed to hear from the president, because obviously there's a reason why he allowed things to happen the way that they did. He allowed Putin to address the world here and take the stage, even if there were no questions asked by the press. There was a reason for that. We didn't get a lot of explanation in the moment as to why that happened, so I'm happy to hear that the president feels good about the progress that was made today. He did say that he needs to call Zelenskyy and call up NATO allies and give them sort of a readout of what happened. But also we should note that some of the agenda didn't go today the way that it was expected to. We know that the president was going to have a one-on-one with Putin. It turned into a 3-on-3 that included Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff. And then on the Russian side, Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, and also Yuri Ushakov, the one of the foreign ministers, or the foreign policy advisors. So that happened, and then there was not the broader, expanded bilateral meeting that would have included the economic angle of this discussion with Secretary Bessent and Secretary Lutnick, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and also Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary. As far as we are aware, that broader meeting never came to pass because it was in the middle of that 3-on-3 that the press was called into their seats, and the two leaders came out and gave their relatively short summary of their meeting and then went on their way.
And so real quick, I want to add in here, the reason why they just kind of wrapped this thing up, they called the meeting early, they came out, as we now know. This is what we are about to get into. If you give me 2 minutes here, seems like everybody's kind of on the same page. There's a reason why the thumbnail of today's broadcast says he's actually doing it. President Trump is actually doing it. It seems to be the case at the moment. And we're going to go through the facts here in just a second. President Trump is actually successfully negotiating a deal. That's why they walked out of this meeting early by about 45 minutes. That's why they came out and talked to everybody. This is impossible. It almost sounds insane to say this. As things currently stand, it seems as if the Ukrainians and the Russians and our allies in NATO and us over here in the US, it seems like everybody's kind of on the same page. It seems like we have the foundation of an actual peace deal. Genuinely. And we're going to break it down here in a second. Now, notice, what did she say? She was talking about how this economic meeting did not end up coming to fruition. Okay, so very clearly, one condition of Russia here as they're navigating this peace deal, this de-escalation, Russia wants to be further integrated into the Western economy. They want to be linked into the American economy. This didn't get a whole lot of coverage yesterday, but it's worth mentioning. Putin didn't come along. Putin came alongside. He brought them with him to Alaska, a bunch of billionaire Russian businessmen, because a part of this deal is Russia says, listen, hey, if we de-escalate, is there a way that we can sort of reintegrate our Russian economy into the Western economy, into the American economy? Can we get access to Europe and to America again? And, you know, this is frankly probably in everybody's best interest. And so this is also a part of this negotiation. So worth noting. Now, folks, I have put together a list. In fact, we have a list right here. I want to talk about specifically, what does Russia want? What does Ukraine want? What are the incompatibilities? Where do we stand with this negotiation? This is where we get to the portion of the stream where we go over all of the stipulations, the details of this ongoing negotiation. Let's start talking details, okay? So I'm going to read through some of the stuff. This is getting reported by the media now. Let's go through what are Russia's demands. Everybody pay attention, listen carefully. As far as Russia is concerned, if we're going to have a total de-escalation, I want to bring up a map here for you guys. Take a look. These are the current battle lines in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Ukraine. First off, Russia's demands. Ukraine has to completely withdraw all of their soldiers, all of their forces from the Donetsk region. Look at that right there. This is going to make sense here in a minute. So Ukraine has to completely pull out of Donetsk. Russia also is demanding that they retain complete control of the territory that it has conquered or claimed in Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. So Russia's saying, listen, we want to keep Donetsk. We also want to keep a hold of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, and of course Crimea as well. They go on to say, this is from Russia. They say, we are not looking for a temporary ceasefire. Instead, we want a full-on peace deal. We want this war to come to an end. Russia is not looking for a temporary ceasefire, 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month. This is Russia saying this. They want a complete and total end to the war. Okay? In exchange, what is Russia willing to give? Putin says that he's willing to sign a treaty. He's willing to sign his name, stating that he will not attack or occupy any new Ukrainian territory or European territory. He's willing to sign a treaty. Listen, if I get to walk away with the stuff that we've conquered in Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, Crimea, of course, then we're done. I'm going to sign a treaty. It's over. I'm not looking for anything else in Ukraine or Europe, the rest of Europe for that matter. Now, Putin also had another request, actually 2 more requests. Let's get to them. Putin says Ukraine must remove its ban on speaking Russian throughout the country of Ukraine. For the last couple of years, ever since the war broke out, Ukraine, the Zelenskyy government, has really been harshly cracking down on anybody that is speaking Russian anywhere in the country. Ukrainian and Russian, they're kind of similar, but they're a little bit different also. And so this has pretty much been the modus operandi for the last 3.5 years in Ukraine, all throughout Ukraine. Pretty much the rule is no speaking Russian. And so Putin is saying, hey, listen, if we're going to have a peace deal, you need to remove all of these legislative restrictions on speaking Russian in Ukraine. People need to be able to speak Russian in Ukraine again. Okay, that's another request of Putin. And then Putin also says that he wants security guarantees for the Russian Orthodox Church that is still to this day operating inside of Ukraine. There's been a little bit of discrimination and, I'm not sure exactly, maybe discrimination is the proper word. Discrimination towards specifically the Russian Orthodox Church. And Russian Orthodox is a little bit different than Ukrainian Orthodox. It's, all a little bit different here. And so there just undeniably has been a little bit of discrimination against the Russian Orthodox faith a little bit in Ukraine. And so Putin is saying, listen, that's got to come to an end. We got to end the persecution for Russian Orthodox churches. People need to be able to speak Russian. And also we want to hold on to these territories, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Where does that leave? Putin is willing to walk away from Luhansk. Putin says, listen, we're going to give it back. As long as these other stipulations are met, then we're going to give back Luhansk. Okay, so what does this actually look like? Okay, this is what Putin wants. Putin very clearly wants to maintain a seaboard, barrier, effectively securing, this is called the Sea of Azov, this little area here, this water between Crimea and Russia. It's called the Sea of Azov. So Putin wants pretty much complete and total lockdown of the Sea of Azov. Notice he doesn't really care about Luhansk. He's willing to give it back in order to put this situation to an end. But, he wants to maintain control over Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Donetsk. Okay, so this is, as far as territory, as far as land mass goes, this is what Putin is asking for. Now, folks, beyond this, we also have some updates coming from Zelenskyy. Like we said last night, President Trump got on the phone late at night, not just to the NATO general, but also to Zelenskyy himself, and they debriefed. And now we have some information regarding how does Zelenskyy feel about all of this. So we're going to quickly read through this article. And once again, thank you all very much for tuning in. If you're here today, we have 7,000 people on YouTube and we have almost 400 on Rumble. Everybody, thank you all very much. Make sure to follow, subscribe. It means a lot. It really helps a lot. I appreciate it, guys. I hope everybody's having a good Saturday. Let's continue with the state of events here, with the state of affairs. This says Zelenskyy outlines peace demands before high-stakes White House meeting with Trump. As we said earlier today, maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, Zelenskyy is flying over to the United States to meet with President Trump in the Oval Office on Monday afternoon. Trump spoke to Zelenskyy late at night on the phone last night. Take a look. Let's break it down. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Saturday evening outlined firm conditions for a, quote, real peace ahead of a high-stakes meeting with President Trump on Monday afternoon. He's coming back to the White House. Zelenskyy posted on X following his phone call with Trump last night and with the European NATO leaders after Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Alaska to try to bring about an end to the 3.5-year-long war. Zelenskyy wrote, "The positions are clear. A real peace must be achieved, one that will be lasting, not just another pause, another temporary pause between Russian invasions." Zelenskyy wants a guarantee. Zelenskyy is angling for a security guarantee. Zelenskyy, maybe he's a little bit worried, okay, maybe we come to a peace deal now. Maybe Putin signs his name now, but what's really stopping him from, changing his mind a year from now? What if he invades us again a year from now? So this is what's influencing the Zelenskyy mindset. Let's keep on reading here. The killing must stop as soon as possible. The fire must cease both on the battlefield and in the sky, as well as against our port infrastructure. All Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians must be released, and the children abducted by Russia must be returned. There are prisoners of war involved. Zelenskyy wrote that thousands of Ukrainians remain in captivity and must all be released, while adding that pressure on Russia must be maintained while the aggression and occupation continue. In a follow-up post, Zelenskyy warned of, quote, Russian treachery that could lead to attacks in order to gain leverage amid ongoing negotiations. And negotiations sure are ongoing. He said, based on the political and diplomatic situation around Ukraine and knowing Russia's treachery, we anticipate that in the coming days, the Russian army may try to increase pressure and strikes against Ukrainian positions in order to create more favorable political circumstances for talks with global leaders. To be fair, as sort of an unbiased American observer over here, both sides have been doing this. In fact, about a day and a half ago, just maybe 8 hours before Trump met with Putin, Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian military, launched their largest drone attack deep into Russian territory that they have ever carried out. Just hours before Putin and Trump met. In fact, Trump was talking about this on Air Force One yesterday afternoon. And so, you know, this is kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. It goes both ways. And this is why the situation is so terrible. It's a war. These attacks keep happening. We got to shut it down. Okay, so this is where we currently stand. Zelenskyy is scheduled to meet with President Trump in the White House on Monday as the three nations try to bring an end to the bloodshed. Trump wrote on Truth Social following the Putin meeting that he felt a peace agreement rather than a ceasefire was ultimately the best way to solve the war. This is what Trump is saying. This is what Putin is saying. This is what everybody wants. Ceasefire? Complete and total shutdown of the war. Trump had been calling for a ceasefire. Trump had been calling for a ceasefire ahead of his meeting, but now we want a total shutdown. What does this mean? If Trump was calling for a ceasefire and then he meets with Putin and now everybody's talking about a total shutdown, this means that Trump must be confident that a total shutdown is even possible, right? That's a pretty optimistic, lofty goal. Ceasefire for 2 weeks? Off the table. We're bringing this thing to an end, okay? That's some of the best news that we could possibly get. Let's keep on reading now. That's confidence. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a permanent ceasefire, a permanent peace agreement. This is what we saw on Truth Social, which would end the war, bring the war to an end, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes does not hold up. He said if Monday's meeting with Zelenskyy also goes well, a meeting will then be scheduled with Putin and, quote, potentially millions of lives will be saved. Now, once again, Zelensky's coming back to the White House. If the meeting with Zelenskyy goes well, I think it will. I'm feeling optimistic. Everybody's optimistic here. Then Trump is going to meet with Putin for a second time. And then maybe the situation is going to be done with. We can only pray. Okay, Zelensky's visit will mark his first return to the Oval Office since February, when Trump berated him publicly for being disrespectful. Come on, guys. Was Zelenskyy being disrespectful in this Oval Office meeting in February? Yeah. Absolutely, yes, he was. And so the evil Trump berated him. Come on, give me a break. Zelenskyy was out of line, and you know what? He was very quickly put back in line by President Trump. Let's keep on reading here. Now, I do want to say real quick, actually, before we continue reading through this article, this Oval Office meeting where things kind of went a little bit haywire in February, this is not the last time that Trump has met Zelenskyy in person. As you might remember, gosh, this must have been three and a half months ago. Trump actually met with Zelenskyy in person in the Vatican, in the Cathedral of Saint. Why am I blanking? Somebody's going to correct me in the name. I guess it's been a long day. Anyway, no, Trump met with Zelenskyy in the Vatican, and they had another one-on-one meeting. So it wasn't in the White House, but they have met again. So anyway, keep that in mind. Now, let's keep on reading here. Though a peace agreement was not decided upon during the meeting on Friday, Trump described it was a successful meeting with a lot of progress. Putin expressed similar sentiments, adding the summit was a, quote, constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. Good. We're going forward. Everybody's on the same page. After his meeting with Putin, Trump also spoke to European leaders, not just Zelenskyy, the NATO leaders as well, who said they support President Trump's peace push, but insist that Ukraine must have ironclad security guarantees to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Guys, we're going to have a lot to break down here in just a second here, but I want to get all the information out on the table. Thank you all for being patient. The European leaders did not address whether a peace deal was preferable to a ceasefire. It will be up to Ukraine to make decisions on its territory. International borders must not be changed by force. A statement was signed by various leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, who has a very lovely, beautiful wife, United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who we all love very much. They said no limitations should be placed on Ukraine's armed forces or on its cooperation with third countries. Russia cannot have a veto against Ukraine's pathway to the European Union and even NATO maybe someday. Now, folks, here's what I want to do. I want to break down really what all of this means. Let's keep our map up here on the screen. Okay, so after meeting with Trump, we haven't heard anything from Putin about stopping Ukraine from joining NATO. So we all know that Zelenskyy wants Ukraine to join NATO. The NATO members, we just heard from those guys, they are comfortable, or at least they want to leave the door open for some time in the future for Ukraine to join NATO. In fact, they're saying Russia should have no say at all in whether or not Ukraine joins NATO. Okay, well, listen, at this point, we're not hearing anything about NATO from Putin. So maybe Putin is actually comfortable with Ukraine at some point in the future joining NATO, so long as one condition is met. So long as Russia, Putin gets to keep Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Maybe Putin is okay with that. Also, keep in mind, we didn't hear anything from Putin over the last 36 hours about limiting the Ukrainian armed forces. This is something that's been kind of on the table over the last couple months, is that if a ceasefire or peace deal is going to be met, that maybe the Russians are not going to want Ukraine to have any type of active military. Well, we're not hearing anything about that right now. So maybe Putin actually doesn't care about Ukrainian NATO membership or Ukrainian military, so long as Russia, this thing comes to an end, and also so long as Russia gets to keep Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Crimea. And they also said they're looking to give back Luhansk, so long as they get to keep this territory as least, and they get to maintain control of the Sea of Azov. I guess that's a very strategically important position for them. It's called the Sea of Azov right there. Now, we also, over the last 36 hours, we have not heard anything from Zelenskyy about refusing to give up this land. Folks, maybe Zelenskyy is comfortable as long as they get to have Luhansk back, and as long as this war comes to an end, and as long as Ukraine gets to keep their military and maybe have a pathway to NATO membership in the future, maybe Zelenskyy is actually comfortable giving up Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Which means that, guys, before President Trump got involved, okay, we were at a direct, this thing was going nowhere, okay? Complete butting of heads. President Trump is now meeting with these guys. It seems like we actually have a potential deal on the table for the first time in 3.5 years. Now, as a bit of a recap here, right now, it seems as if this is essentially the deal. Russia gets to keep all of the territory it's conquered along the Sea of Azov, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Crimea. Ukraine gets to keep Luhansk. So Luhansk is given back. Russia pulls out of Luhansk. And Ukraine also gets security guarantees, meaning Putin is going to sign an agreement, he said, Hi, I'm Vladimir Putin. I'm never going to invade Ukraine ever again. And also, I'm never going to invade Europe. So Putin is willing to sign that agreement. And also, maybe Ukraine gets to join NATO at some point in the future. So this is where the deal is currently standing at the moment. Now, it must be understood, obviously, Russia, this is just very clear. Obviously, Russia is negotiating from what can be described as a position of strength or a position of power here. Why? Because they've been winning. This is just the inarguable reality. Russia has been effectively winning this war. There's a reason why they have been able to take this territory. It's because they have been winning. And so, given the current circumstances, given all of this, I really think that this is probably the best case scenario. The deal that we just outlined 45 seconds ago, I think this is probably the best deal that everybody can hope for. Keep in mind, this deal is bigger than just Ukraine and Russia. Really, there are 4 key players here: NATO, the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. All 4 people, handshake, handshake, handshake. Everybody's got to be on the same page because it's a lot of people are involved here. Now, like I said, that said, given the circumstances, this is probably the best deal that both sides, that all 4 sides can agree on, and that all 4 sides can really hope for or pray for in the future. And a deal also, guys, let's be honest, this is a deal that, frankly, if actually carried out to execution, if we're all signing the deal off here in a couple weeks or months, this will just undeniably be a massive win for President Trump. Undeniably. This war has been at a complete and total meat grinder standstill for 3.5 years. No progress has been made either way. The only thing that's been going on is every week, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 young Ukrainians and young Russians and civilians have been getting blown up. They've been losing their lives. And so finally, now we have an actual leader back in the White House, and maybe now, for the first time in 3.5 years, we actually have a chance to put an end to this situation, thank God. Now, I want to take a look at this clip, which details where this whole situation is heading. This also came out of the Sean Hannity interview, Trump and Hannity, late last night. Take a look at this clip, folks.
A big day today, and you're going to fly back, I assume, to our nation's capital, and probably have time to reflect on this day. The next step, you had said that you wanted a meeting as quickly as possible, maybe with you, President Zelenskyy, and President Putin.
Yeah.
I don't know if I trust the two of them in a room alone together. I think it would be better if you are there.
Well, they both want me there.
Did that come up?
Yeah, it did. I mean, they both want me there, and I'll be there. You got to see it out. And it is a big day. I think either way it's a big day. But if we get this solved, it's a really big day because we're going to save a lot of lives.
And so, folks, like I said, real quick, 2 things to mention here. It must be acknowledged, in the absence of President Trump, this war would just continue raging on. As you all know, this war went on for about 3 years under Joe Biden's leadership. Not once did Joe Biden or anybody from America actually pick up the phone and have a conversation with Putin. Not only did they never meet with him in person, but they never even called him on the phone to say, hey, listen, Putin, what's up? What can we do to de-escalate this? President Trump has been talking to Putin multiple times a month for the last 6 months. And yesterday, as we all saw, he flew out up to Alaska and met with him in person. And lo and behold, we are for the first time in 3.5 years actually looking at not just a temporary ceasefire, but a total de-escalation, a total peace agreement. The war is coming to an end. That is where things currently stand. And like I said, whereas before, all 4 entities involved in this war, USA, NATO, Ukraine, Russia, everybody was really butting heads. It seems like there were a lot of conflicting opinions and conflicting desires. Now it seems like everybody is actually kind of on the same page. And like I said, for the first time, there's just a little glimmer of light. In fact, I would say a big glimmer of light at the end of this tunnel. However, there's something else President Trump said in this clip here, and there's a reason why I played this clip for you guys. It's because President Trump said, yes, I'm going to meet with Zelenskyy on Monday. That's a big deal. He just met with Putin yesterday. If the meeting with Zelenskyy goes through, if it's productive, if things go well, what did he say he's going to do next? He's going to schedule a meeting between the 3 of them, between Putin, Zelenskyy, Trump, in the same room, in the same place at the same time, hashing this out. In fact, what really optimistically would that look like if Putin, Zelenskyy, and Trump are in the same room negotiating this? That would be your total end of the war. This is where all three of them would be signing the agreement. The war has come to an end. It's over. That's what that would look like. So this is the optimistic outcome here. This is a big deal. So I just have to say, I've been paying attention to all of the left-wing, mainstream media coverage of how this entire situation has unfolded over the last 36 hours. And it's just embarrassing. Like, really, I mean, I was going to say it seems like this. It is this. The left-wing media actually wants this war to go on. Do you agree? Most certainly the American deep state, the American left-wing progressive apparatus, they have been complicit in this war. Arguably, they have helped facilitate the outbreak of this war. They definitely have facilitated the outbreak of this war in the first place. They wanted this. They wanted the war. Trump is back in the White House. Trump wants it to shut down. And so the left-wing media, they are doing exactly what they've been doing. They've been trying to throw wrenches in the system, wrenches in the negotiations, say, oh, Putin humiliated Trump. This was a national embarrassment, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Listen, we now, for the first time in 3.5 years, we have light at the end of the tunnel. We are actually looking at a way out of this war, and thank God for that. So this really is the breaking news, the bombshell news of the day. It looks like this thing is actually going to get shut down, and thank God. So as I like to say, yes, this is what I voted for. People say, hey, Trump voter, are you getting what you voted for? Yeah. Actually, yeah, pretty much not at a rate of 90% or 95%. Yeah, I voted for Trump to end this war, and that is exactly what he is doing. Thank God the bloodshed has to come to an end. Now, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to do something a little bit crazy. First off, I want to say thank you all very much for tuning in today. Please make sure to like and to subscribe, and make sure to follow on Twitter. We're live on Rumble, Matt Morse TV. We're live on YouTube, Matt Morse TV. On X or Twitter, Matt Morse TV. Follow me everywhere other than in real life. Thank you. Folks, as a part of today's special broadcast, we're going to do something crazy. We are going to wrap up this show on YouTube. We're going to continue on Rumble, and we're going to kind of hang out. Today, there's actually a video I want to watch with you guys. If you follow me over to Rumble, we are going to end this discussion and update as it relates to Ukraine. And we're going to go to Rumble now. We're going to watch a video about... I believe it's Baltimore, which is the #1 drug overdose city in this country. And this is sort of an on-the-ground documentary talking about why this city has gotten so bad, why it's become so terrible, and really just how terribly catastrophic this drug epidemic has been for this country and why it has even happened in the first place. So we're going to transition over to Rumble now. I want to say thank you, everybody on YouTube, for tuning in. If you want to join us on Rumble, I appreciate it. And if not, I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow with another awesome live broadcast. So everybody have a great, if you're on YouTube, have a great Saturday evening. Have a great Sunday morning. And if you're coming over to Rumble, I'll see you there. Okay, we're transitioning over right now. All right, Rumble guys.